Every club. Every day. The Global Sports Podcast Network.
Hello everybody and welcome back to the Daily Newcastle. I'm your host Michael Grahamslaw and today we are here to talk about Newcastle United's 2-1 victory against Fulham at St James's Park in the quarter-finals of the EFL Cup. That's right, we're back in the semi-finals for the third time in 4 years. But let's get straight into it and talk lineups because the contrast between Sunday and Wednesday was pretty striking. First off, the spine of the team changes dramatically. Against Sunderland, Howe went closer to the first choice 11. Nick Pope aside, it was pretty much that recognisable Premier League core. And then fast forward to tonight, it was a rotation-heavy approach, but one that I think everybody needed to see. Ramsdale kept his place. Defence in front of him was reshuffled. Lewis Miley went into right back. Tino Livramento shifted over to left back with Fabian Schär coming in for the injured Dan Burn, just like he did on Sunday. And it sounds like Lewis Hall tweaked his hamstring once again, which is obviously the reason why he missed 10 games earlier in the season. So that's not exactly great, is it? Particularly when a certain other fullback goes down in the second half and comes off. But we'll get into that later. Elsewhere, Bruno Guimaraes kept his place in midfield with outsiders Joe Willock and Jacob Ramsey coming back into the team with something to prove. It felt like they needed good performances today. And then up front, we saw a complete rotation, which Ian and I did predict we would see yesterday. Harvey Barnes came in on the left, Jacob Murphy on the right, and Yoane Wissa got the nod up top. But then when you look at this squad, I think it's pretty clear that depth is needed in January in the defence. But offensively, it doesn't really look that bad. You've got two decent players in every position. And I know people will say, well, Anthony Elanga's not very good and Jacob Ramsey's not very good. Very few players come in and hit the ground running straight away. You need to give them time. You need to give them sort of a lot of minutes on the pitch before you actually see the best of them. I remember what Anthony Gordon was like in his first 6 months. Absolutely dreadful. It looked like we got rinsed. And then we had a winger who got 10 goals and 10 assists the next season. It was more, but the milestone of 10 goals, 10 assists is what I'm getting at there. So I've got faith both will come good. We have seen glimpses from Elanga, less so of Ramsey, unfortunately. But confident that both of them will come good. Trying to be a bit more positive after the weekend. But less about all that and into the game that happened tonight. Fulham started the better side without a shadow of a doubt. But they didn't really create any clear-cut chances, really. They had 20 touches in our box before we had 3 in theirs. But thankfully, the third was a goal for Newcastle United. Yoane Wissa reacting to Jacob Murphy cross that was palmed out by Benjamin Lecomte into an empty net. Not really the best of saves, should we say, from the Fulham goalkeeper, but it's one that, unless he's got the shout, he needs to make the save. And he can't really push it anywhere but either in front of him or out. And if he pushes it out, it's going straight bang into danger. So hard to blame the goalkeeper for that. Good positioning from Yoane Wissa and the easiest goal he's probably ever going to score in a Newcastle shirt. But yeah, first 20 minutes, I said it was all Fulham, and it came as no surprise that they equalised pretty quickly. Free kick was played short, moves over to the right, long diagonal ball over the left flank. Anthony Robinson has got away from Jacob Murphy, who fell asleep. Anthony Robinson plays a first-time cross, put on a plate, really, for Sasa Lukic, and he heads the ball beyond Aaron Ramsdale. Scored more goals at St James's Park than Craven Cottage now, and that's a little bit of an embarrassing stat. And when that happens, you're sitting there and thinking, oh, it's going to happen again. But after the 20th minute, Newcastle woke up And while in the first half they didn't really create any too many clear-cut chances, there were enough half chances to remain positive. The best of which, Johan Wissa misjudged a Joe Willock cross, which I thought was a very, very good cross, nicely balanced. And it's just bounced off Wissa's shoulder. I think a fully fit Wissa probably does do a little bit better with it, but it was a pretty shocking attempt. Other than that, the only real notable things that happened in the first half, from a Newcastle perspective, there were a few yellow cards for Fulham, but Fulham's Kevin fired the ball straight at Aaron Ramsdale from a first-time effort. That was a pretty decent chance. And Fabian Schär will miss the first leg of our AFL Cup semi-final for picking up a really nonsensical yellow card midway through the first half, holding Jimenez on a counter-attack that he was never getting the ball from. The counter-attack literally comes from, I think it's Harry Wilson, just volleying the ball out of the box. Jimenez tries to get away from Schär to close down the other defender where the ball is going to, and Schär just holds him and gives away the free kick. And it was probably a bit harsh giving him the yellow for it, but nothing really you can argue about. It was a foul. And there is a chance that Jimenez, Newcastle defender, makes a mistake and Jimenez goes through on goal. So I guess in that situation, unlucky, but it's Newcastle. You wouldn't be too surprised if something happened there. Second half, Fulham take off the carded goal scorer Lukic and bring on Harrison Reed. But the flow of the game didn't really change, stayed exactly the same. And by that, I mean Newcastle have all of the ball without really creating too many chances, and Fulham pray that they can hit Newcastle on the counter-attack. Both sides looked fairly comfortable. It was kind of thinking that it was going to take a mistake for such as Sunday, really, a mistake for either side to win the game. Doesn't come to that in the end. But it did get to the 60th minute. I'm sitting there and I'm thinking, effing hell, are we just not going to put in a challenge today? And I'm sitting there and I'm thinking, well, actually, I can't remember the last time we were really, really physical in a game. And then I looked at it and was like, oh, maybe Fulham are just being really physical. Turns out after 60 minutes, Fulham had made 17 tackles to our 6. When have you ever heard of that from an Eddie Howe Newcastle United side? Really, really strange, and I don't know if we're just scared of getting injured. Maybe we're knackered. I mean, Tonali could have been red carded in the final moments for an elbow. He tries to hit the ball at the corner, is fouled, doesn't get the foul, and then when he's coming back, he's just walking back and he just gives a little swift elbow to the Fulham player, and it's really stupid. With VAR, he gets sent off. It really epitomises how Tonali's been the last few weeks. It's a shame because when he came on, he probably had his best performance for a little while, but the stupidity there, it's up there with Jacob Ramsey against Burnley. And I've said for Ramsey's incident, I'd be putting him at the back of the queue because he cannot be trusted. If Sandro had been caught there and had been red carded, be saying exactly the same for him, even though he is one of the best midfielders we've ever had, because you can't be that stupid. But yeah, Tonali by this point in the 60th minute hasn't actually come onto the pitch yet, so spoiler. But in the 60th minute, we start turning the screw a little bit. Jacob Murphy crosses the ball into the box from the right. Joachim Andersen gets a touch on it before it gets to the goalkeeper, but he knocks it into his own net. Turns out from the through ball from Bruno Guimaraes, Murphy was offside. But just before and just after that, Newcastle had some decent chances coming from the left with both Tino Livramento and Harvey Barnes firing straight at Lecomte from pretty narrow angles. And then it was around 65 minutes when Tonali comes on, Voltemada joins him, Johan Wissa comes off, Joe Willock also comes off. I think the big thing from that, and the only reason I'm really mentioning the Voltemada coming on, he didn't do anything really, but was the fact he got that great response when he came on. The first chant was Voltemada, Voltemada, ole, 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 which I think was massively important because the first thing he'll have been thinking going onto that pitch is if I don't get my usual reaction, the fans have started to turn on me and it's going to start going a bit sour because we know how fickle we are as football fans. I'm exactly the same. Win against Chelsea and I'll probably be singing and I was going to say shit in rainbows there, but not quite. I'll be taking rainbows. I'll be painting rainbows. I'll be doing anything really. The point is, I'll be quite happy, and I've said that about as dreadfully as we've defended this season in the latter stages. And today, actually, we ended up in the lead and didn't concede. But before we get to that, there is the main casualty of the game, and that is Tino Livramento. And it doesn't look like it's too bad. Tino Livramento, unfortunately, is closing down. He does slip. Doesn't look too seriously injured, but he was down on the floor for a little while. Eddie Howe decided to hook him, and then he was replaced by Alex Murphy, who Ian has been asking to get a chance in the first team for a long, long time. Ian, I hope you're happy, because the cost could be a lot worse than the gain. But I will say Alex Murphy, when he came on, he did put in a good performance against an in-form Harry Wilson, and he certainly didn't look out of place. And he was busting a gut to get back. You know, you can see he is a little bit more of a centre-back, I would say, than a full-back. You can see that by his height. I think he's 6'2". 6'2". Yes, he's 6'2". And you can see the way he was powering back. It was like watching Gabriel Obertan when he actually ran for a change for Newcastle. I've tried to think of a pacey Newcastle player, and the first one that's come to mind is Gabby Obertan. You can tell my brain's rotten right now. But Newcastle kept knocking on the door, and it was eventually another young player that put the ball in the back of the net. Now, to start off, Lewis Miley forces Lecomte into a fantastic save in the 91st minute, and you're thinking, no, that was the chance. This is going to go to penalties. I'm not sure I can be bothered with a penalty shootout, particularly going out of the cup in a penalty shootout. But no, a brilliant cross in from Sandro Tonali. Probably the best corner of the game. I am sick and tired of our crosses going to the back post. It's like every single one we're trying to loop into the corner. This one, right on the money, 6-yard box. Lewis Miley flicks it back. If he doesn't get there, Malik Chow does. I'm not sure what happens if Chow gets there, obviously, but Lewis Miley, brilliant header. Power, precision, and 2-1. Newcastle United. Lecomte did a lot to stop Newcastle during the game. He couldn't stop that. And Lewis Miley stepped up for not the first time this season and really, really has cemented his place in that Newcastle United midfield. However, after dropping 19 points in all competitions this season, from leading positions, should I say, whether or not we could hold on was a really, really big question, and Fulham didn't actually create anything. A Kenny Tete long-range strike was the only real worry they had, and to be honest, it was the most comfortable I've felt in the latter stages for a long, long time. And that's mental because we went into the 90th minute against Burnley 2-0 up. But Fulham didn't really have enough time to do anything, thankfully. And I will say, I do think a passionate late last gasp winner was what Newcastle United needed. If we'd won 4-0, bounced back after the derby, the questions would have still remained. You would have had fans and they're going, well, why can't we do it on the road, but we could do it at St James's Park? Why are we putting in that kind of performance against Fulham and then not laying a glove on Sunderland? So I think the fact that we took a bit of adversary, the team showed a bit of fight, they controlled the game, they looked to bounce back, and there was passion on the pitch, which we certainly didn't see at the weekend. And a young Geordie lad getting the winner. It was pretty much the perfect way Newcastle could have gone through and bounced back. They've just now got to do that against Chelsea as well. That was part one of bouncing back. It finishes in March. It's a very long way to bounce back, but credit has to go to the young lads, as I mentioned. Lewis Miley for being the hero once again, man of the match, and Alex Murphy, who again came on, looked very composed. Looks like he's probably going to have a job to do against Chelsea as well. And then I think it's going to be one of those where an EFL Cup semi-final doesn't make up for a shambolic derby, but this is the first step in putting it right, and I'm actually quite confident that Eddie Howe in Newcastle will make it right. We're just 2 games away, from another trip to Wembley, but the team that stands in our way is Manchester City. And realistically, Newcastle have never really had a better run under a manager against Manchester City than they do right now. Obviously, we've knocked them out of cup competitions before. I remember I was in Krakow on a stag do when we beat them 1-0. We've already beat them this season. And it's one of those where I'm looking at City and I'm thinking, you know what, maybe just once it's a winnable game. I know the last 2 games at the Etihad, I nearly called it the City of Manchester Stadium again. They've beat us 6-0 in both across 2 games, 4-0 in the Prem, 2-0 in the FA Cup. But if we can keep it tight in Manchester in the second leg, take a win there from St James's Park. It's a one goal lead is all we really need, and get a draw down there if we can. Don't get me wrong, I'm looking at our record against them in Manchester right now, and it is abysmal. It's almost as bad as the Derby record, and that is saying something. But I genuinely think this team at this time against this Manchester City could cause an upset, and you are going to end up facing either Chelsea, Arsenal, or Crystal Palace in the final. I do think it's going to be Arsenal, to be honest. And an Arsenal-Manchester City final does seem the most likely, but Newcastle could get there, and to be honest, they might feel like they need to after that shambolic display at the weekend. But part 1's in play. Newcastle are beginning to bounce back. It continues again against Chelsea, then against Man United, and then into January as well. Eddie Howe, not going to say he's off the hook because it wasn't a great performance, but I personally am more than willing to give him at least till the end of the Champions League fixtures, because I think he's deserved that. I think you've got enough credit in the bank to last as long as what you've got us into. The FA Cup, the EFL Cup, and the Champions League, won it last year. Give him a chance to retain it. Champions League is the reason we qualified, let's be honest. Absolutely fantastic manager for us. He's the reason we qualified. Let's make him the first manager to get us into the knockout stages of the Champions League. And it won't be the first time we've qualified from a group stage, obviously, but that was when we had 2 group stages to get through, and it was all just seemed a much harder format. There's an asterisk. We didn't have to play Union Saint-Gilloise in those days, but it's another thing that Eddie Howe can add to his legacy here at Newcastle United. It's another month or 2 months. Let's give him January. Let's give him the time. Whether the board want to back him financially or not, I don't know. We'll certainly see. We've got 2 weeks now until the transfer market. I do think they'll back him. I think they'll at least give him till the end of the season. It all depends on what happens, really, for me in the next 30 days. But in the meantime, I've been Michael Grahamslaw. This has been the Daily Newcastle. Thank you very much for listening. Check us out on our socials or anywhere you get your podcasts, or you can check us out on the radio at NUFC Talk TV radio station. But for now, we're in the semi-final. We can almost crack a smile.
Every club, every day. The Global Sports Podcast Network.